Good morning. My name is Kirsten Robertson, and I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. A little bit of background on myself. I'm an engineer, and I work for the Greenville County Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm also a farmer, a small farmer. We've been farming for 28 years, and about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided I wanted to finally start rotational grazing. And we have goats and sheep, and there was zero information that I could find about rotating goats and sheep. Everything was on cattle. So I spent about 2 years staying up most of the night reading papers, technical papers, and watching videos and reading books and like really educating myself. So I am the person that was up at 2 o'clock in the morning reading y'all's technical papers, and I just wanted you to know that some people do read your papers. In that, while I was reading all of these papers, some themes started to come out, and so I'm not as smart as you guys. I haven't done the research, but what I did is a meta-analysis of 3 papers that talk about what happens with the bugs in the system when you start to let your forage grow. And I thought it was really fascinating because it has, it actually has a cascading positive effect. Even though these little critters, you wouldn't think that they would do much, when you add it up and you start to realize the effects of the other parts of the ecosystem just only from letting your grass grow taller, it's really fascinating stuff. So I want to talk about 3 secondary synergies that improve your pastures. One is spiders, the second paper is on dung beetles, and the third one is on rodents and beetles. And yes, I do recognize that spiders are not insects, but yeah, insects just sounded better. Oops, went the wrong way. So the first thing we're going to talk about is spiders. And for each of the 3 different papers, I talk about the method that that the bug uses, and then to improve your pastures, and then I talk about how you can facilitate that they're doing the best job that they can to help improve your pastures. And then thirdly, I talk about how you can test to see if they are doing, or see if what your facilitation practices are doing are actually helping. So the first one is about spiders. This was the most intriguing and the one that really got me thinking about it mostly. This has to do with that predator-prey relationship, and when you're rotational grazing, they talk about that you're mimicking nature and that your predator is the fence, and as the fences actually help you move the animals, and so the animals are behaving differently, and they're actually going different places, and they're eating different things, and that very thing happens with the grasshoppers. The spiders are the predators, and they don't necessarily herd the grasshoppers up the canopy, but what they do is they make them cautious. And so the grasshoppers tend to move upward in the canopy, and they'll move up into the tops in the goldenrod. Grasshoppers do prefer grass, according to this paper that I was reading, but they will move up into the canopy in the goldenrod and eat the goldenrod. And what that does is it knocks it back so that sunlight can hit the ground. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with whole swords of goldenrod in an early succession, but what it does is it shades out, and it can become a monoculture. So what these grasshoppers do is they allow sunlight, which actually allows germination of other kinds of plants. Excuse me. And that diversity can include legumes. So this study actually showed that by having spiders in your system, it increased the fertility in the soil because you have more nitrogen. The other part to this is that your nitrogen is going to cycle faster. The goldenrod leaves decay slower, and so these other diverse species will decay faster. So that's the method. How do you facilitate? Well, what does a spider want? They want long rest times so that they can spin their webs and hang out. They want plenty of forage because you rarely see a lot of spiders on a bare ground, a bare field. They need a place to spin their webs, and they want a lot of diversity and native wildflowers because those bring in the delivered takeout food to them, those native pollinators they get to eat. So how can you test? You go out and check your pastures early in the morning when the dew is on the ground. And there is a farmer out of Australia who said that his goal is to find 40 spider webs per square meter. We had a big discussion on this on the regenerative grazing group on Facebook. And so he tries to find 40 spider webs per square meter. That's one way you can see how your system is going. Another thing is to put on one of those headlamps and go out at night and look along your fence lines, and you'll see a lot of glittering, and you'll think it's dew, but it's not. Like, get up close because it's so amazing. Those are all spider eyes, and it's a little creepy, but kids love it, I love it. So if you're into it, put on a headlight. A flashlight doesn't work. You have to use a headlamp. The next thing I want to talk about is dung beetles. Most of us know what dung beetles do and the positive effects, but what this paper did, it talks about the dung beetles that when you're rotational grazing, what you're doing is well, first let me talk about the dung beetles, and they break down the manure. They take the choicest bits of nitrogen and deposit it into right at the root zone, so it's just a beautiful system. The managed grazing keeps the dung pats all in a smaller area, so it's kind of an all-you-can-eat singles mixer for the dung beetles. They can all go one place and find each other and find food and party and have a great time. And they do that on bare soil in a continuous grazed pasture as well, but it's all going to be at the watering point or in the shade. So what the rotational grazing does is it moves that all-you-can-eat mixer all the way around the pasture, and that improves your water filtration too. So the grazing management does matter. So how do you facilitate? You manage your grazing, you move your animals, and also watch your pesticide application. It's been proven that some dewormers and pesticides actually negatively affect the dung beetle larvae. They come through the manure in the animal. So ear tags are better than porons, and some pesticides are better than others for the dung beetles. Ivermectin tends to be not so good for dung beetles. So how can you test? You spend time digging in your manure. And the first thing you can do, if you don't want to dig, is you can just look at the top of it, and it should have holes in it, and that's where the dung beetle have gone in. I, of course, have to get in there and dig, and you'll find more than one species. It's amazing. It is so much fun to do. The other thing you can do is walk behind your animals and watch for insect activity. If your system is really humming, then you should see dung beetles and insect activity showing up within a couple of minutes. The third paper I want to talk about has to do with beetles and rodents. This one is a little bit of a stretch. It is actually, the study was done on cropland with row crops. And I kind of transitioned or adapted this to the same thing that we have going on in our pastures. If you're continuously grazing, it's very similar to a bare cropland. And then the paper that I was reading talks about that some row croppers actually plant cover crops to encourage the beetle population so that they will eat weed seeds. And I don't know how, that sounded foreign to me. I'm not a row cropper and I don't know a whole lot of those, so I don't know if that's true, but it does make sense that under more cover you're going to get more beetles and more rodents. So it turns out, the study showed that beetles and rodents eat 3 to 4 times more weed seed under cover. So if you have bare continuous grazed pasture, you're not going to have as many beetles and rodents. The problem with this, the thing you have to be really careful about, is that if you're like me and you don't have a no-till drill and you tend to broadcast or try to overseed, then those beetles and rodents are going to come and eat the delicious, juicy, tender or cover crop seed that you just put out, or grass seed, instead of the weed seeds. But I thought it was interesting, I thought it was applicable, so I put it in here. So how do you facilitate? Keep your forage tall so that they have cover, and drill any grass seed or cover crop instead of broadcast. How do you test? You look for rodents, and also look for rodent predators. You should possibly see coyotes or foxes or hawks or owls who are coming in to get those smaller rodents. So that's pretty much it. It was just a short little fun thing that I noted, and I didn't know if anybody else had put all these synergies together. I just thought it was fascinating that just getting your grass to grow taller, there's more to it, that it's impacting an entire ecosystem, and everything is connected. And so I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to share it with you. These are my sources and where I got the papers. The first one is, it's just an article, but it is one of the primary papers that it's based on came out of Yale, and then we have NC State and Purdue, which I know are both represented here, so I thought that was pretty cool. Some of y'all may be intimately involved in these papers. I did want to leave you with two things. The first one is that this conference is going to be in Greenville, South Carolina next year, this time, and I want to welcome you. I hope you come to see us. And the second thing I wanted to say was, go Tigers!